What else about Steve? Yes, sir.
He had no sympathy.
He also had no empathy. He and I share that. You have no idea how fortunate you are when you have zero sympathy and zero empathy. It's like when that girl fell over and cracked her head, cut her head open, and half the room wanted to get up to help her. Sit down! I just kept rolling on. We had to replace the fucking carpet too. She fucked up the carpet with her blood. If those of you gonna shit your pants, I mean, try to hold it as best you can so you don't fuck up the chairs till you get out to the toilet. We haven't had anybody shit their pants in a while. I gotta turn up the heat the rest of the week, I guess. I gotta turn up the heat. And on the reports, they'll say 25 units of alcohol on a Wednesday, and Thursday they did nothing. And sometimes on the Friday they did nothing. I've had 25 units in it, so I know how much that is. But in fact, and you wonder why an Irish guy, which makes me think of this, an Irish guy just recently did his first acquisition, but it took him, let me see, a year and, it's either a year, 4, 5, or 6 months. So it's 18, 19 months. But he was one of the guys that 25 units alcohol. Unless you're really tough, I mean, 25 units of alcohol normally wipes out the next day. But everybody's got a reason why this program takes longer than it should. It just so happens I saw that he made an acquisition, but it took him 20 months. Whereas some of the kids do it in 20 weeks. We've never had anybody do it in 20 days. We've had people do it in 45 days, but 100%, maybe not 100%, 98% of those people that did it in real short periods of time are working in excess of 120 hours a week. In excess. Now, when you list your first, I chuckle when I say this, when you list your hour by hour week, how many hours you work and how many hours you waste, at least half of you in this room waste more time in a week than you work. Probably 3/4 of you, maybe even 80% of you. And you don't know that. Some of you really think you're hard workers. And then when you have to list every fucking hour, every fucking minute, and when I tell you most of you ought to just shut down your Facebook, shut down WhatsApp, all the social media, and then you got a chance. Nobody does that. No, I won't say nobody. I'm exaggerating again. Remember, I bench pressed 400 pounds when I really only bench pressed 395. I'm exaggerating. But almost nobody will do that. When I tell you to change your phone number and never talk to your parents for 3 years, these are things that worked. Back in the late 90s, we had a guy, a convict, did white-collar crime here in Britain. He had 3 O levels, 1 GSC. Could have been like one of the old farts in here. I see him coming out. I'm going into the Ritz bar, the Trevally, and he's coming out of the Ritz bar, Trevally. And I said, how you doing? He says, fine. Remember, no mentor, none of that shit, okay? Hadn't seen him in a year and a half. And I said, well, he was worried about staying away from his convict buddies. And so he said, well, that thing that he told us about the phone worked. In those days, block phones, okay? I said, well, what was that? He said, I changed the number, and it says on the message, if you don't have my number, you're out of my fucking life. And he said, I gave my number to 3 people. I sent it to you, Dan. I said, well, I never called him, but he sent it to me. And he said, it worked fine, except when my mother got the message. She showed up at my flat. I didn't answer the door. Now, this sounds harsh, doesn't it? But some of you can't get rid of your parents with a fucking hatchet and a barge pole. And who made you fucked up? And changing the number. Now, I didn't used to tell that story because I forgot about it. I got a million stories. But about 2 or 3 years ago, I started telling this story about him. And normally it depends on what happens during the week when I remember the story, because there's no set slide. But when I got this email from this Irish drunk who did a deal, and he's 99% ahead of all the cocksuckers that are listening on YouTube. But changing your phone number works like a fucking charm. Changes your kids might not like it, but if you have kids. My children have to make an appointment to call me. I think I told you that, right? No, who did I tell that? Somebody. You, okay. And they call Kim, and when does Dad have time to talk? Or Skype. They don't call Skype. I don't like Skype because it's not 100%. Sometimes it breaks off, right? And, but I don't give a fuck. $3 a minute or £2, who gives a shit, If you're worried about a toll call, something's wrong in your life. You understand that? And they got a new thing called WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And that's free too?
Texting, yeah.
Don't you see? Don't you understand? If you got to worry about that kind of shit, there's something not right with you. There's something not right with your life. Bunker Hunt told me 35 years ago, Danny, he says, if you got to worry about paying taxes, you're not making enough fucking money, boy. And he didn't mean boy like they call minority black people boy. He didn't mean it that way. But none of those guys, they're all dead now, and nobody calls me boy anymore, and nobody calls me Danny anymore. But guys, it just made me think of it. Okay, last night you saw Steve. You saw, what else did you see?
The lion.
Dan, okay. Let's start with Steve. What are some of the, other than this is, I think that's the third movie about Steve. There's another movie. Every movie that comes out about him now, since he's been dead, is worse. I hear the real movie's coming out next year. He's an icon, he changed the world. No question about it. But you equate, when I say you, I mean general public in the world, equate high performance with goodness. Stalin, Hitler, Mao Zedong, a few of the guys that I look up to vis-a-vis influencers of my life, were not goody two-shoes, were they? They were ruthless people. Let's talk about Steve. In the back corner.
He's completely obsessed with the project and nothing else matters.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Focused, he had no fear. He had like zero fear of anything.
Okay, and here's a guy, he's adopted. I don't know if they cover that in the movie, but he's adopted. He went to school for, depending on what story you want to believe, 3 days, 3 hours, or 3 weeks, and dropped out. Okay, yes, you.
Laser beam focused on his goal, and no one could deter him from what he was thinking. It's really hard to get him off.
I may be wrong, but I'm never in doubt. Don't confuse me with the fucking facts. I'm not interested in facts. And you'll see me write that in your reports. I don't give a, because when you're explaining why you fucked up in your reports, whenever I see the word but, I don't read it. I'm not interested. You fucked up, you fucking vagina. I don't care why you fucked up. Okay, what else? Yes, sir.
The world seemed to, in Steve's mind, revolve around him.
Oh, amen.
It was about Steve, even when it wasn't, like the cover of Time magazine. It's in his mind, it all revolved around Steve.
Elon, Bill, almost all those guys, the world revolves around them. They think they're the center of the world. We're going to read some confidential emails that have been released to the public, unbeknownst to them, where they talk about, the world is, I'm the center of the universe. Some of the yes, sir.
The musician plays the instrument, the conductor plays the orchestra.
And you are now know the difference between the oboe, the flute, the tuba, but there's only one thing that you're going to play, and you're the conductor of this. And most of the other financial instruments, in fact, all except one, we don't need in the beginning. All we need is commercial debt and a motivated seller. What else about Steve?
He was vindictive. Like, he always took revenge.
All of them do. They don't call it a black book. Now, when I had a black book, it had girls, this one's good for this kind of sex, and but that was my black book, okay? But now, they don't have a real book. Now they put it in a file or a PDF or some shit that I don't understand. But they're all vindictive. They're all. What else? Yes, sir.
They'll make relations personal and hold everyone accountable.
Yeah, the great ability to compartmentalize. So he'll deal with his ex-wife, his daughter, a technical issue, his business partner, then he walks on stage. And he just transition between one and the next. No problem.
Now, so far, all the things that you've described about Mr. Jobs, which is pretty consistent with all the high-performance people that we're going to talk about, are the antithesis of you.
He entertains people to sell from the selling perspective.
Yeah.
He insisted on total control, and it was his way.
Or the highway.
Highway, exactly. And he wanted to win all the time, even when there was really no benefit, and there was a great loss to the other party. For instance, his daughter. For that measly sum of money, he'd rather argue and win the argument than pay the money.
I want to hand you an article today to read about how his daughter talks about him, she's a grown woman. And as soon as these guys die, for those of you that haven't been part of these circles, and I've been part of them in and out for over 35, 40 years, the real truth comes out. Years ago, it was the kinky sex and shit that you were sleeping with donkeys and shit. That used to come out. Now nobody gives a shit about that. Now it's all the non-PC shit that they did. Of course, that was non-PC. But that was before political correctness. And it's quite amusing to me, and especially when I know a lot of these guys and everybody that was part of those circles. It's like President Trump. I never read The Art of the Deal, his book, but the takeaway, sell, you just walk out. It's this way, or you just walk out. You take it away, and you take the opportunity for him to buy it or participate away. That's the oldest sales technique since fucking Moses. Yet almost everybody that has ever come through this seminar in 26 plus years has never done a takeaway sale. Zero. We used to keep track. We don't keep track anymore. After we did 7, 8, 9, 10 years that we never had a takeaway sale, and anybody ever came to the fucking seminar, I guess nobody ever did it. So next, we'll ask another question now. Because you're so afraid, you work so hard to get that, not a prospect, but a suspect. A suspect is somebody that will return your call make a meeting with you. A prospect's a cocksucker that can buy from you. You took so long finding some meaty, skinny, 2-inch piece of shit that'll talk to you, you're afraid to lose them, so you won't do a takeaway. I've done more takeaways than I got white hair in my head. And 75 to 95% of the time, you close a takeaway. Fuck you. You don't want it, goodbye. Remember what Frank said, the 7-footer? You got one offer. And even though you heard this from me, you heard it from successful mentee after successful mentee before the week's over, you still won't do it. Because I tell you, it works 99% of the time. Well, maybe that 1% I'm gonna get lucky. And then I'm not gonna go find a prospect. There's 2 or 3 of you in here that think you know how to cold call because you're in some kind of sales. Well, if you knew how to cold call, you'd be rich. So for those of you, 2 or 3 of you that say that you could make 3, 4, 5, 9 million calls a day, well, how come you had to borrow from your mother to come here? How is that possible? If you know how to sell and you're not getting as much ass as a fucking rock star, I guess you don't know how to sell. I got more ass than a bus station toilet seat. If the toilet seat wasn't fucking ripped off. A lot of bus stations, they are ripped off. What else about Steve? Yes, sir.
His view of the past versus past successes, he was totally unattached. Past failures, totally indifferent.
Because we, guys like us, we live in the moment. I can't fix what you did wrong before you got here. If I get down in the hole with you, the hole, of desperation that most of you live in, I can't help you. I can only, from the time you got here forward, I can change some of your belief systems. If you're 30 years old, you've been around about 250,000 hours. Well, this week can change those 250,000 hours if you immerse yourself. Now, you've heard the guys and the gals so far say they immerse themselves. They use different words. The French girl said it a little differently, but it has to be an obsession. You have to be, I already said this, you have to be like a born-again fucking zealot Christian, a born-again zealot Muslim, a born-again, you gotta be totally. And for those 2 or 3 of you that got some money, that's very hard to do because you're already happy. You're already in your comfort zone. And you've been in your comfort zone a long time. You want to make more money as long as I don't have to take any risk. That's basically it. For those of you who got a free bob. And the system will work. It's not going to work in, like Josh did, but it'll work. What else about Steve? Yes, sir.
He had no sympathy.
He also had no empathy. He and I share that. You have no idea how fortunate you are when you have zero sympathy and zero empathy. It's like when that girl fell over and cracked her head, cut her head open, and half the room wanted to get up to help her. Sit down! I just kept rolling on. We had to replace the fucking carpet too. She fucked up the carpet with her blood. If those of you gonna shit your pants, try to hold it as best you can so you don't fuck up the chairs till you get out to the toilet. We haven't had anybody shit their pants in a while. I gotta turn up the heat the rest of the week, I guess. I gotta turn up the heat. Anything else about Steve? Okay, you saw, in addition to that, you saw
Danlok.
Dan, who is actually coming to the seminar next month. Came to me in 2003, spoke broken English. He flew from Vancouver to Los Angeles, where I was, and I had breakfast with him. I don't do breakfast or lunches, but he got a special. If you fly with it in 7 hours or 8 hours, you get you only have to pay $40 for the flight, some shit. So anyway, I made an exception and I had breakfast with him, and he brought me, which I still have in my office, a frog, a brass frog on a special fucking Chinese fucking rock, holy rock. It's some shit, I don't know what it is. But I still have it, and when I went to see him in Vancouver earlier this year, I reminded him, and so when he spent several hours interviewing me, but and now, he's a polished guy, he's made a lot of money, and he's helped a lot of people. But what are the takeaways about Dan? Yes.
So simulation, like one of the credos, like if your self-image, like if you're not, for example, if you're not a closer, if you're not, if you don't see yourself as a real entrepreneur that's going to be successful, you're never going to be successful. If you don't see yourself as high performance from day one, you're never going to be high performance. Correct.
Well, he certainly didn't see himself when I first met him, but his career has pivoted and morphed. He's not into his red silk suit anymore, but considering he can barely talk, he's a hell of a public speaker now. And he's transformed a lot of lives. And he has a lot more of a following, as does Brian Rose, than I do. But when you count some of the guys that I've taught, mentored, coached, whatever word you want to use, I have touched millions of people, as I alluded to yesterday. What else about Dan? Yes, sir.
So that most people, when they start to get setbacks, they lower their goals.
Correct.
And that's what you should not do.
Correct. And when I was there with him, and he had his little 10 or 11 ninja assistants there, and they all look like from a ninja movie. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but I mean, they all look like, they ought to be wearing black masks and jumping from the fucking ceiling, he certainly understands now to raise the bar. And you were taught, or most people are taught, set goals that you can make incrementally, and so you're not disappointed if you don't reach them. Now, I don't know who's, a few years ago I tried to research who actually came up with that horse shit. But it's nobody, you know, they go like this, nobody takes claim. Normally somebody takes claim for everything, but nobody takes claim for that. Because it's just so, if you apply that to athletics, it's just the antithesis. You know, of course, we pulled our kids out of athletics. They just started to have participation ribbons. Just started that. And then if you got ahead 6 runs in baseball, they call the game, and they just started that, and we pulled the kids out of athletics. Because that's the last thing that I want kids, our kids especially, to, you know, I'm doing it for participation. And I alluded to it yesterday, some of you in this room have run a marathon, or attempted to, or I should say walked a marathon. You can walk a fucking marathon in 5-6 hours. You don't have to fucking run. You don't have to break a sweat. But a lot of people run or participate in marathons for the experience. I believe I know what they're trying to say, the experience. But one of the things I say is the last fucking thing I need is more experience. Okay, YouTube, thank you.